I had exactly $9,800 in my emergency fund the night my mother told me to wire it to my sister-in-law before the police get involved. My lower back still felt like it belonged to someone else. 3 weeks after surgery, I moved carefully, like my body was made of glass. I was sitting upright on a firm chair because the couch hurt, a heating pad tucked under my sweater, when my brother's text came through. "Don't make this worse. Just pay it." The accusation was simple and poisonous. I'd stolen $9,800 from the lockbox at the Gallagher Scholarship Gala, the fundraiser held in my late grandmother's name. The mystery object was sitting on my desk in a plain padded envelope, an access badge I didn't recognize, mailed to me with no return address. And in the background, like a quiet metronome, was a threat I understood better than most. A criminal complaint doesn't care that you're innocent. It cares what can be proven. Let me take you back. The Gallagher Scholarship Gala wasn't supposed to be dramatic. It was supposed to be tasteful, Chicago tasteful, all brushed brass and candlelight, a downtown hotel ballroom with a skyline view, and a harpist who looked like she'd been born knowing how to be serene. My grandmother, Nora Gallagher, had been a public school librarian for 43 years. She saved like she was always a few bad days away from ruin, and when she died, she left a modest bequest with one condition. It had to fund scholarships for kids who worked part-time jobs and still showed up for their lives. No legacy plaques, no bronze statue, just checks to students who needed a hand. My mother loved the story of Nora. She loved telling it. She loved the idea of our family being the kind of people who give back. And because she also loved control, she made herself the chair of the committee. I should have said no to being involved. That's the part I can admit now without flinching. My flaw has always been that I can spot risk everywhere except in my own family. I'm a compliance auditor at a regional bank. I spend my days looking at what people swear they didn't do, and then tracing what their access and their metadata say they actually did. But when my mother asked me to just oversee the money part, I told myself it was safer with me. I thought I could protect the scholarship. I didn't think I needed protecting. The gala was on a Saturday. The hotel was the West Bridge, off Michigan Avenue, the kind of place where the elevators have soft lighting so nobody looks tired. I'd been careful with my back. No lifting, no bending, no quick turns. I wore a black dress that didn't fight my incision and low heels that made my posture look like I hadn't slept on a wedge pillow for 3 weeks. My brother Evan arrived late like he always does, moving through life as if everything is running behind him and he's doing it a favor by catching up. Evan is 32, handsome in a way that photographs well, and allergic to accountability. He brought his wife, Sienna, who looked like a brand. Sleek hair, champagne-toned dress, smile that never quite reached her eyes. Sienna took over rooms without raising her voice. She didn't need to. She was the kind of person who could say, "That's not really the vibe," and make you feel like your existence was a design flaw. At cocktail hour, she drifted from group to group, collecting praise like it was her job. "We're just so honored," she kept saying, palm to chest, eyes shining. It was convincing until you noticed she never said my grandmother's name unless someone else said it first. There were donation kiosks set up along one wall, tablets on stands where people could pledge amounts, swipe cards, choose to cover fees. We also had paper pledge cards because older donors liked something they could hold. My mother insisted on a physical lockbox for checks and cash because people still bring envelopes. I'd tried to talk her into a courier pickup and an armored deposit, something boring and safe. She said that sounded cold. The lockbox was a heavy black steel case with a coated latch, kept in the hotel's small administrative office behind the ballroom. The West Bridge required it. Their contract had a whole section about controlled storage for event proceeds. They assigned one staff member to monitor access, and they issued temporary badges to the committee chair and treasurer. I was neither chair nor treasurer. I was oversight, which meant I had eyes, but apparently no authority. The night went smoothly until it didn't. At 9:47 p.m., the auction closed. People mingled, laughing into their wine, and the scholarship amount climbed on the big screen. $112,400 raised. My mother dabbed her eyes. Evan posed for photos. Sienna clapped with her hands held delicately, like she didn't want fingerprints. At 10:03 p.m., the storm hit. Chicago storms don't knock politely. The wind slammed into the windows, rain came sideways, and the ballroom lights flickered once. just enough to make people laugh nervously, then steadied. The hotel went on to generator power. The DJ made a joke about romantic ambiance. Someone cheered. I remember thinking briefly that the outage was the kind of story people would tell later. Remember when the storm tried to shut down the gala? I didn't know it would become the cover for a crime. I left the ballroom once, just once, during that generator flicker because my back tightened in a way that made my vision pinch. I needed a quiet corner and a minute to breathe without smiling. I walked down the short hall toward the restrooms, one hand braced against the wall the way my physical therapist hated. When I came back, Sienna was already near the hallway, speaking to the hotel's event manager with a posture that said she belonged in charge. She glanced at me and smiled. "Hey," she said softly, as if we were close. "We're just moving some things around. The storm's messing with the equipment." I nodded, because nodding was easier than engaging. That's my other flaw. I used to confuse peacekeeping with wisdom. At 11:12 p.m., guests started leaving. The last song played. People hugged my mother, promised to send checks, praised the beautiful night. Evan and Sienna were among the final cluster, lingering as if they were helping. Then, the next morning, my mother called. Her tone was wrong from the first word. "Mara," she said, and my name sounded like a legal document in her mouth. "We have a situation." I was standing in my kitchen, careful with my spine, stirring oatmeal I didn't want. The rain had washed the city clean, the kind of morning that looks innocent. "What kind of situation?" I asked, already feeling my stomach drop. "The lockbox," she said. "The scholarship money. It's short." "How short?" I kept my voice even because panic never improves arithmetic. There was a pause, the kind that suggests someone is deciding how cruel to be. $9,800, she said. "Checks are accounted for. The digital pledges are complicated, but the cash and several pledge envelopes are gone." I set the spoon down with a deliberate care I didn't feel. "That needs to be reported," I said, "to the hotel and to the police. The West Bridge will have protocols." "We are not calling the police," she snapped, and there it was, control trying to outrun reality. "Not yet." "Not yet," I repeated. "Why not yet?" Because the next voice on the line wasn't hers. It was Evan's. "Mara," he said like he was calming a stranger on a plane. "Just be honest." "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, and my throat felt tight, like my body recognized danger before my mind caught up. "Sienna saw you," he said. "Last night. You were near the admin office. You had your tote bag. You were alone for a while." My pulse thudded. I walked to the restroom, my back. "Mom," Evan cut in. "Tell her." My mother came back on, voice flat. "Sienna also saw you with an envelope. She said you put it in your bag when you thought nobody was watching." I stared at the sunlight on my counter. It looked obscene. "That's not true," I said. "I didn't touch the lockbox." Silence. Then, my mother. "Mara, don't do this." "Don't do what?" "Don't make us drag this out," she said. "If you're stressed, if you're struggling after surgery, we can talk about it. But this money was raised in your grandmother's name." The word struggling landed like a slap. Not because I was ashamed of needing help, but because she was offering me a story to confess to. "I'm not struggling," I said. "I make good money. I have savings. I don't need to steal scholarship funds." Evan's voice returned, harder now. "Then you can replace it. Replace it. As if guilt was a bill you could pay to make people comfortable." "I want this resolved," my mother said. "Today. If you miss this, you lose everything." There it was, the clock trigger, the deadline disguised as morality. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means we'll file a report," she said, and I could hear how much she hated that she might be forced to deal with reality. "And when they ask who had access, who was seen near the office, who had a bag, Mara, do you understand what this will do to our family?" To our family, not to me. My mouth tasted like metal. "So your plan is to accuse me and pressure me into paying." "Our plan," Evan said, "is for you to stop being selfish." The call ended, not with goodbye, with the clean click of someone closing a door. I stood there in my kitchen with oatmeal cooling in a bowl, and the strangest part wasn't the accusation. It was how quickly they said it, like they'd been waiting for a reason. If you want to understand why it broke something in me, you have to understand the history scars, the quiet patterns that don't look like abuse until you name them. When I was 14, Evan was 11. I'd saved for months to buy a used laptop, a clunky gray thing from a neighbor. I needed it for school. Evan wanted it for games. One afternoon, I came home and found it on the living room floor, screen spiderwebbed. Evan was sitting beside it, staring at the damage like it was a fascinating science experiment. My mother's first words weren't, "Are you okay?" or even, "What happened?" They were, "Mara, what did you do to your brother?" As if my mere presence caused destruction. Evan sniffled on cue. "She yelled," he said. "It scared me." My father didn't look up from the TV. He only said, "Mara, apologize." I apologized. For a broken laptop I hadn't touched. Then I used my babysitting money to replace it, because the household rule was always the same. Whoever cares the most will fix it. The second incident was quieter, but worse. When I was 25, I got promoted. It was my first real win: health insurance, a salary, a title that made my grandmother's eyes soften with pride. I invited my parents and Evan to dinner at a small Italian place near my apartment. Evan arrived late and made a show of apologizing, then pulled out his phone and told everyone at the table, loudly, that he was thinking about investing. My mother leaned toward him like he was giving a TED Talk. "That's wonderful," she said. "You have such a mind for big things." Then she turned to me, almost as an afterthought. "So," she said, "you're still living alone?" It was the way she said alone, like it was a moral failing. My grandmother, bless her, patted my hand and said, "Mara's doing fine." My mother smiled, not kindly. "She's always been independent," she said, and independent was her favorite insult. Sometimes too much. That was the dehumanization moment. Not a scream, not a threat. Just the steady framing of me as the one who didn't need tenderness. So when the gala money vanished and they needed a villain, I fit easily into the old shape they'd made for me. Responsible, capable, replaceable, and, apparently, suspect. What they didn't account for was that my work brain doesn't shut off just because my heart is hurting. I didn't call them back. I didn't defend myself over the phone. I did what I do when numbers go missing. I opened my laptop. I pulled up the Westbridge contract and searched for the words I cared about: security, access, surveillance, audit. The hotel had 2 systems that mattered: camera coverage in public corridors and badge access logs for staff-only areas. The lockbox office was staff-only. Entry required a temporary badge programmed for that event, and the system recorded every tap, time, badge ID, door, and outcome. I also remembered the donation platform. The kiosks weren't just tablets. They were tied to an admin dashboard. If someone had committee access, they could edit pledges, mark them as cash, void them, reassign them. Most platforms log changes. Most people don't know where to look. I needed 2 things: the access logs and the donation export. I called the Westbridge's event manager. Her name was Callie Tran. She'd been brisk and competent all through planning, the kind of professional who smiles without surrendering control. She answered on the second ring. "Westbridge Events, Callie speaking." "Callie, this is Mara Gallagher," I said. "I'm on the committee for last night's scholarship gala." A pause. "Ms. Gallagher, is everything all right?" "No," I said evenly. "There's a discrepancy in the lockbox funds. I need to request the access log for the administrative office door from 9:30 p.m. to midnight, and I need to preserve any relevant surveillance footage." Her voice cooled into policy. "Those records are typically released to law enforcement." "I understand," I said, "but I also understand your contract requires audit cooperation for suspected theft, and the gala account holder is my mother, Nora Gallagher Scholarship Committee. We are going to file a report. I'm asking you to preserve data immediately." Callie exhaled. "I can place a hold," she said. "A preservation notice, but I can't email logs without authorization." "That's fine," I said. "Tell me who can authorize it." "The committee chair," she said. or the person listed as financial custodian. My mother, of course. I thanked Callie and hung up, then opened a fresh document and started listing what I could obtain without my mother's permission. First, the donation platform export. I wasn't the admin, but I'd helped register donors and I had an email thread with login links. The platform was called Brightbid. I logged in. My access level was volunteer, which meant I could see donor names and amounts, but not edit or view internal logs. Still, I could download a volunteer report, so I did. Second, public information. If Sienna and Evan were desperate enough to steal from a scholarship fund, desperation probably had a source. I didn't need to run anything illegal. I didn't need to hack like they'd later accuse me of. I used what any determined person can use, court records and filings. Evan had always painted himself as stable. Sienna posted brunch photos. Their apartment looked clean in pictures, but stability is not a photo, it's cash flow. I searched Cook County civil records. It didn't take long. Sienna had a civil judgment from a boutique fertility clinic for unpaid balances, filed 8 months earlier, partially satisfied, still active. Evan had a separate small claims case for an unpaid contractor invoice from a home renovation they'd bragged about, but never seemed to finish. And then, the one that made my stomach tighten, a UCC filing tied to a short-term lender, Windrow Capital, secured against future receivables for a consulting business registered under Evan's name. A shell, a front, a desperate attempt to borrow like a business when you can't borrow like a person. I printed the records, not because I wanted to humiliate them, but because motive is a key that opens doors other people keep locked. Then my phone buzzed again, a text from my mother. Dinner, tonight, 7, bring the money. If you miss this, you lose everything. And then, from Sienna, a message that made my blood go cold. Your job depends on trust. Don't make me explain to your employer why you were involved in missing funds. There are threats that are loud, and then there are threats that understand how adults actually get hurt. I set my phone face down, then I waited, because there was still one more thing I needed. The thing that arrived in my mailbox that afternoon, like an answer to a question I hadn't asked out loud. A plain padded envelope, no return address. Inside, a temporary event badge on a black lanyard. On the back, in small printed text, was an ID string, WB Temp 1147, and underneath that, in pen, one sentence. This badge was used at 10:14. Ask for the audit trail. I didn't know who sent it. Not yet, but it told me 2 things. 1, someone at the hotel knew more than they were supposed to share. 2, someone wanted the truth found. I slid the badge into a folder and drove to my mother's house with a cashier's check in my purse. Not because I intended to pay, but because I needed to remove their favorite argument. If I came empty-handed, they'd say I was deflecting. If I came with the check, the only thing left would be the truth. My mother's house was in the western suburbs, the kind of neighborhood where the lawns look like someone irons them. Evan's car was already in the driveway. So was Sienna's white SUV with vanity plates that made her seem like a lifestyle, not a person. Inside, the smell of pot roast filled the air, like a set piece. My mother had set the dining table with the good plates, white porcelain with thin gold rims. She did that when she wanted to feel righteous. Evan sat on one side, posture relaxed, jaw tight. Sienna sat beside him, hands folded as if she were about to receive sympathy. My father sat at the head, quiet, watching me the way he watched the news when he wanted to believe the anchor. "Mara," my mother said. "Sit." I sat carefully. My back reminded me it was healing, and also, apparently, that I was not allowed to be dramatic. Evan didn't say hello. Sienna offered a small smile. "I'm glad you came," she said, voice soft. "This doesn't have to get ugly." I looked at her and realized something simple. People who say that are always the ones making it ugly. My mother clasped her hands. "Do you have the money?" I reached into my purse and placed the envelope on the table. The cashier's check was inside. Evan's shoulders loosened, just slightly. He couldn't hide it. Sienna's eyes flicked to the envelope like it was a glass of water after a long run. My mother exhaled as if she'd won something. "Good," she said. "We'll deposit it tomorrow and—" Before you touch it, I said quietly, I need you to answer one question. My mother's expression tightened. Mara, one question, I repeated, calm enough that even my own voice surprised me. My father finally spoke. Ask. I turned to Sienna. When you said you saw me near the admin office, what time was that? Sienna blinked. I don't know. Late. Late, I echoed. That's not a time. Was it before or after the generator switch? Evan leaned in. Why does that matter? Because the generator switch happened at 10:03, I said. And the admin office has badge access logs. Sienna's face barely changed, but her eyes sharpened. We didn't know that. I tilted my head slightly. You didn't? My mother's voice rose. Stop interrogating her. You're the one who took it. I didn't, I said. But I also didn't expect you to accuse me without evidence. We have evidence, Evan snapped. We have a witness. Eyewitness testimony is unreliable, I said, still even. Especially when the witness has something to gain. Sienna's smile thinned. What are you implying? I'm implying that if you're confident, you should want the logs, I said. You should want the hotel to pull the audit trail. My mother slammed her hand on the table hard enough to rattle the silverware. No more games. Give us the check, and you can go. My father looked between us. Mara, he said, voice lower, why are you doing this now? Because I finally understood that this was the only language they respected. Proof. I opened my bag and pulled out a thin folder. On top was a printed civil judgment. I slid it across the table toward my father. What is this? He asked. A court record, I said, for an unpaid balance, and that one, I placed a second sheet down, is a UCC filing for Windrow Capital, a secured loan against Evan's so-called consulting receivables. Evan stood abruptly. What the hell is wrong with you? It's public record, I said, and it explains motive. Sienna's composure cracked at the edges. This is disgusting, she said. You're stalking us because you're embarrassed. My mother pointed at me. You are not doing this in my house. My father picked up the papers, scanning them with the slow horror of someone reading a medical report. Evan's voice sharpened. Dad, don't read her garbage. My father looked up. Evan, he said quietly, is this real? Evan didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence did it. Sienna reached for the cashier's check envelope. I slid it back toward myself. No, I said. My mother's voice went shrill. Mara, I brought it to remove your excuse, I said. So you couldn't say I refused to fix it, but I'm not paying for something I didn't do. Sienna's hands trembled once before she pressed them flat on the table again. Then we call the police, she said, with a softness that tried to pass for virtue. Okay, I said, but before you do, you should know something. Evan's eyes narrowed. What? I reached into my bag and placed the lanyard badge on the table. The black strap looked ordinary. The badge looked like any temporary event credential. My father stared at it. What is that? A Westbridge temporary badge, I said. It was mailed to me today. Sienna's breath caught, tiny, almost nothing, but I saw it. Evan swallowed. So, I said, that badge was used at 10:14 p.m. on the admin office door. My mother scoffed. You could have taken it? I didn't have a badge, I said. I wasn't authorized. Remember? I'm not chair or treasurer. Sienna's voice came out too fast. Lots of people could have used it. True, I said, which is why I requested the audit trail. Evan leaned forward, eyes hard. You don't have that. Not yet, I agreed. Because the hotel won't release it without the chair's authorization. My mother's chin lifted. Then you don't have anything. That confidence, so comfortable, so practiced, told me everything. She truly believed the world would bend around her denial. I looked at my father. If you want the truth, I said, authorize the log release, right now. Call the hotel, put them on speaker. My mother snapped, absolutely not. My father's eyes stayed on the badge, then on Evan, then on Sienna, and something shifted. Not love, not trust, but doubt, the beginning of reality. He picked up his phone. My mother reached for his wrist. Christopher. He pulled away gently, which, for him, was a rebellion. He called the West Bridge. Callie answered, professional as ever. My father identified himself and my mother, then told Callie he wanted the access logs for the administrative office door. Callie paused. We can provide a summary to law enforcement, she said, or with written authorization from the committee chair. I'm the committee chair, my mother said loudly, as if volume created authority. Consider this verbal authorization. I'm sorry, Callie said. It has to be written. An email from the address on file. My mother's mouth tightened. Fine. She stood, walked to the kitchen, and with rigid hands sent the email while muttering about humiliation. She returned, sat, and folded her arms. There, she said. Happy? I didn't answer. I just waited. 5 minutes later, Callie emailed a PDF to my mother, who opened it with a posture that said she expected vindication. She scanned it once. Her face blanched. Read it, I said softly. My father leaned in, eyes narrowing as he read the bullet points. The log showed every badge tap. 10:12 p.m. WB Temp 1147. Access granted. Admin office door 10:18 p.m. WB Temp 1147. Access granted. Admin office door 10:22 p.m. WB Temp 1147. Access granted. Admin office door. 3 entries, all during generator power, all clustered. My father's voice dropped. Whose badge is that? Callie's voice crackled on speaker. That badge was issued to... One moment. We listened to typing. The sound felt loud. Callie returned. That badge was assigned to a member of your committee, listed under Treasury Support, Sienna Caldwell. The room went still. Sienna's maiden name was Caldwell. She'd kept it professionally, using it like a polished accessory. My mother turned to Sienna with a confused, wounded expression. That can't be right. Sienna's face had gone tight, as if her skin didn't fit anymore. I don't know, she said. Maybe the hotel mixed it up. Evan's voice came out strained. This is ridiculous. It's an error. Callie, still on speaker, added calmly. The badge was checked out at our event office at 6:02 p.m. and signed for. My father's gaze snapped to my mother. Who signed for the badges? My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. Because she knew. She had signed. She'd handed Sienna access. She'd loved trusting her. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just felt the cold relief of the first crack in a lie. And then my phone buzzed. An email. Not from Callie. From a Westbridge address I didn't recognize. Subject line? Brightbid admin log. Preserve. Inside was a single sentence. You're going to want the change history. It doesn't match the volunteer report. Attached was a screenshot that made my heart slow down, like my body was bracing for impact. Because it showed the Brightbid admin dashboard, and it showed edits, time-stamped edits. 10:16 p.m., donation $4.48, status changed from card to cash, edited by admin S. Caldwell, 10:19 p.m., donation $4.52, voided, edited by admin E. Gallagher, 10:21 p.m., donation $4.57, amount changed from $2,500 to zeros, edited by admin S. Caldwell. I stared at the names. Sienna, Evan. It wasn't just stolen cash, it was manipulated records. And I realized, with a quiet kind of dread, that the lockbox was only part of it. The missing $9,800 might have been manufactured, created by editing the digital totals so the shortage would match what they planned to extract from me. I looked up at them. Evan was watching my face like he could read the screen without seeing it. Sienna's hands were clenched under the table. My father's voice was low, almost gentle in how dangerous it sounded. Mara, he said, what else do you have? I took a slow breath. This, I said, is where it gets official. Because I wasn't going to do this with family yelling and emotional bargaining. I knew what messy families do. They bury evidence to protect their self-image. So I stood, slid the cashier's check back into my purse and said, I'm leaving. My mother jerked upright. You can't just... I can, I said, and I am. Evan lunged verbally, not physically. Evan never risked looking like the aggressor. If you leave, we're calling the police. Good, I said. Do it. Then, because my voice stayed calm, the room couldn't accuse me of being hysterical. "This isn't revenge," I said. "This is justice." I walked out with my back aching and my mind already building a chain of custody. Outside, the air was cold and damp from the storm. My hands were steady on the steering wheel. I didn't cry until I got home and locked my door. Then I cried once, quietly, into a dish towel, because grief has to leave the body somehow. After that, I made calls. The first was to a lawyer, not because I was guilty, but because innocence needs strategy when the people accusing you are willing to lie. My attorney's name was Denise Harper. She spoke in clean sentences. She didn't waste words. "If they file a police report naming you," she said, "you don't go explain yourself. You don't clear it up. You let me handle contact. You collect documentation. You preserve everything. And you do not, under any circumstances, send them money." "I won't," I said. "Good," Denise replied. "Now tell me what you have." I told her about the badge log and the admin edits. Her silence was the kind that meant she was recalculating the situation. "This is fraud," she said finally. "Not just theft. And because it involves charitable funds, you'll have a paper trail of oversight." "What do we do next?" I asked. "We formalize," Denise said. "We get sworn statements, we preserve the hotel records through a legal request, and we notify the nonprofit board, quietly, with proof." Then she added, "You said the edits were emailed to you by someone at the hotel?" "Yes," I said. "But I don't know who." "We'll find out," she said, "and we'll do it carefully." That night, Denise drafted a preservation letter to the Westbridge and to Brightbid, formal notice to retain logs, access records, surveillance, and admin history. We also requested the full audit trail through counsel, which carries a weight that family demands don't. 2 days later, the second folder changed everything. It arrived from Brightbid's legal compliance team, a secure download with the full change history, including metadata, IP addresses, device IDs, session timestamps, and admin role permissions. Denise and I sat together in her office, scrolling through line after line of what looked boring until you understood what it meant. Sienna's edits were made from a device registered as Sienna's iPhone. Evan's edits were made from a laptop logged in under Evan G with two-factor authentication sent to Evan's number. The IP address, the Westbridge guest Wi-Fi, the timestamps, exactly overlapping with the badge entries to the admin office. They weren't guessing, they weren't sloppy, they were coordinated. They wanted the records to show a shortage that fit a story where I paid. Denise leaned back, fingers steepled. "They manufactured a deficit," she said. "Then they used the lockbox to make it feel physical. And they named you because you're the one with savings." I stared at the screen, feeling the strange nausea of recognizing yourself as someone's plan. Denise's eyes sharpened. "We're going to file a report ourselves," she said. "Not as retaliation, as protection. If they go first, they control the narrative." So we went to the police, not with emotions, with documents. We brought the Westbridge Access Log PDF, the Brightbid metadata report, the civil filings showing motive, and Denise's preservation letters. We gave the detective a timeline. We gave him names. We gave him the kind of clarity he rarely gets. The detective, Officer Ramirez, didn't promise miracles. He didn't say, "This will be quick." He said something better. "This is solid," he told us. "We can work with this." Then, because the universe likes timing, Evan called me that afternoon. I didn't answer. Denise did. Later, she told me exactly what he said. He asked in a voice that tried to sound reasonable if we could handle it privately. He said it was a misunderstanding. He said, "Family shouldn't destroy family over money." Denise's reply was simple. "Your client already tried to destroy my client over money," she said. "We're past private." That week, the nonprofit board requested an emergency meeting. This was the part I hadn't expected to hurt as much as it did. Because the scholarship wasn't just money, it was my grandmother's memory made practical. The board met in a small conference room at a community center, fluorescent lights and folding chairs. No glamour, just people who cared about the cause. My mother sat stiffly in the front row, clutching her purse like it could keep her safe. Evan sat beside her, looking offended. Sienna sat on the other side, posture perfect, eyes bright with the kind of practiced innocence that had fooled my family for years. Denise sat beside me, calm, unmoved. The board chair, Mrs. Patel, cleared her throat. "We're here because a discrepancy was reported," she said, "and because we received documentation from counsel." My mother's head snapped toward me. "You involved outsiders?" she hissed, as if the scholarship board were intruders. Mrs. Patel held up a hand. "Let's keep this respectful," she said. Denise stood. "We are not here to argue," she said. "We are here to provide evidence." She distributed packets. Each one contained a timeline, the access log, the Brightbid metadata summary, and screenshots showing edits tied to specific admin accounts. Sienna's expression didn't change until Mrs. Patel read the line about badge WB Temp 1147 being assigned to Sienna Caldwell. Then her eyes flicked to Evan. A small motion. A crack. Evan spoke first, voice rising. "This is insane. Anyone could have used Wi-Fi." Denise didn't blink. "The report includes device IDs," she said, "and two-factor authentication tied to Mr. Gallagher's phone." My mother's voice trembled. "Sienna, tell them this is wrong." Sienna's face went very still. I don't know," she said. "I was busy. I was helping. People were everywhere." Mrs. Patel leaned forward. "Then why were you in the staff office at 10:12, 10:18, and 10:22? Silence. The board treasurer, an older man named Jim, spoke softly. "And why were donations edited during those exact minutes?" Evan stood. "This is a witch hunt," he said. "Mara has always been jealous." Denise cut him off, not with volume, but with precision. "My client underwent surgery 3 weeks ago," she said. "She moved carefully all evening. She did not have badge access. She did not have admin access. She did, however, become a convenient scapegoat when funds went missing and someone needed a replacement check." Sienna's lips parted, then closed. She looked at her hands like she was seeing them for the first time. Mrs. Patel's voice hardened. "We are obligated to report suspected misappropriation of charitable funds," she said. "Effective immediately. The committee is suspended pending investigation." My mother gasped. "You can't." "We can," Mrs. Patel replied. "And we will." That was the first public consequence. Not social media, not gossip. Something more permanent. Official separation from the scholarship. When the meeting ended, Evan cornered me in the hallway. He stepped close, eyes bright with anger and panic. "You're ruining us," he said. I looked at him with the calm I reserve for people who mistake entitlement for victimhood. "You did that," I said. "I just stopped covering it." Sienna appeared behind him, face pale. "Mara," she said softly, "can we talk?" Denise stepped between us like a door closing. "No," she said. "All communication goes through counsel." Sienna's eyes flashed, anger, fear, calculation. Then she turned and walked away without looking back. 2 weeks later, the police executed a search warrant for Evan and Sienna's devices. Not because I demanded it, but because the evidence supported it. And then the pattern interrupt came that I didn't see coming. The anonymous sender revealed himself. Callie from the Westbridge emailed Denise and asked for a meeting. We met in the hotel's small administrative office where the lockbox had been kept. The room smelled faintly of printer toner and lemon cleaner. Callie looked tired, the way people look when they've been carrying an ethical weight. "I'm not supposed to do this," she said, "but I can't pretend I didn't see it." Denise's voice was calm. "We're listening." Callie pulled out a folder. Inside was a signed badge checkout sheet, my mother's signature, next to Sienna Caldwell's name, and behind it, an incident note written by the night security supervisor about suspicious staff office access during generator power. Callie hesitated, then added, "Our security supervisor was on duty that night. He flagged the badge taps because they were unusual." "Why didn't he report it immediately?" Denise asked. Callie's face tightened. "He tried, but the committee chair, your mother, said it was a family matter. She asked us not to make it a scene." My stomach turned. Even then, even in the middle of a theft, my mother's instinct had been to protect the image. Denise asked gently, "Who was the supervisor?" Callie looked at me, and something about her expression shifted into recognition. "Marcus Reed," she said. The name hit me like a memory. Marcus Reed, my freshman year, the quiet guy in my accounting class who always had a pen that worked and a calm way of explaining things. We'd done a group project together. He'd once walked me to my car after a late study session because it was snowing and the campus felt empty. I hadn't seen him in years. Callie continued. "He told me he recognized the last name Gallagher. He said he knew someone named Mara." I swallowed. "He recognized me?" Callie nodded. "He asked for your email." That was the ally identity twist. The anonymous help wasn't a faceless hero. It was someone who remembered me as a person, not a problem. Denise looked at Callie. "Is he willing to provide an affidavit?" she asked. Callie's answer was immediate. "Yes." 2 days later, Marcus Reed signed a notarized affidavit stating the badge access was suspicious and that the system logs were accurate and unaltered. He also confirmed that the door had not been forced and that the only entries were via authorized badge taps. Chain of custody, notarized statement, professional credibility. It wasn't flashy, it was deadly in court. Evan and Sienna responded the way people respond when their story collapses. They tried to get louder without getting truer. They filed a police report anyway. Not against each other. Against me. They claimed I'd harassed them, accessed their private information illegally, and threatened to ruin their lives. They framed my public records research as stalking. They told the police I was unstable after surgery. Officer Ramirez called Denise. Denise listened, then said, "We have the metadata," and sent it. That was the end of their counterattack. Not dramatically, quietly, like a door locking. Then came the public set piece, one they didn't choose, but couldn't avoid. The Westbridge, under pressure and to protect itself, filed an incident report to their insurer and to the city because charitable events have reporting requirements tied to licensing. Brightbid also flagged the account for fraud review. It became official in ways my family couldn't contain. Evan and Sienna were called in for questioning. Not in a dramatic interrogation room like TV. In a bland municipal office with beige walls and a detective who didn't care about their curated lives. They tried to blame each other. Sienna said Evan handled the tech stuff. Evan said Sienna had the badge. Their marriage became a courtroom rehearsal. Denise filed a civil claim on my behalf too, not for vengeance, but to protect me from being used financially again. It was a straightforward action. Defamation and intentional infliction of economic harm, paired with a request for a restraining order against further contact or threats to my employment. My mother cried when she received the papers, not because she was sorry, because it was public. She called me from a blocked number. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail anyway. "Mara," she sobbed, "please, you don't understand what you're doing. You're tearing the family apart." I listened once, then I deleted it. Because the family had already been torn. I'd just stopped stitching it back together with my own skin. The court date for the restraining order hearing was set quickly, not weeks away, days, because threats to employment are taken seriously when documented. I walked into the courthouse with Denise, my posture careful, my back still healing, my heart strangely steady. Evan and Sienna sat at the opposite table. Evan looked like he hadn't slept. Sienna looked polished, as if makeup could rewrite metadata. My mother sat behind them, clutching tissues. My father sat beside her, staring at the floor. When the judge entered, everyone stood. The room settled into that specific hush that makes people remember consequences exist. Denise presented our evidence in clean order. The texts threatening my job, the police report naming me, the Brightbid audit trail, the Westbridge access logs, the affidavit from Marcus, the board's suspension notice, each piece building a structure you couldn't blow down with emotion. Sienna's attorney tried to argue it was circumstantial, that the edits could have been made by someone else if phones were borrowed, that the badge could have been misassigned. Then Denise introduced the simplest fact of all, two-factor authentication. The code sent to Evan's phone, the login confirmed, the session time matched the badge tap time. The judge looked over her glasses at Evan. "Mr. Gallagher," she said, Do you deny these are your devices? Evan's mouth opened, then closed. Sienna's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. And in that moment, the courtroom went silent. Not because of drama, because everyone understood the same thing at the same time. The lie had reached the end of the room. The judge granted the restraining order, limited, specific, and enforceable. No contact, no third-party contact, no mention of my employment. Any violation would carry penalties. It wasn't poetic, it was protective. Afterward, in the hallway, my father approached me slowly, like he wasn't sure he had the right. "Mara," he said, voice rough. I'm sorry." I studied his face. He looked older than he had a month ago. Shame does that when it finally lands. "You believed them," I said quietly. "You didn't even ask me." My mother appeared behind him, eyes swollen. "We were scared," she whispered. "We didn't want the scholarship to—" "You didn't want the scholarship to be embarrassed," I corrected gently. "You didn't want you to be embarrassed." She flinched like I'd struck her, but I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't needed to. Evan walked past us, jaw clenched, not looking at me. Sienna followed, her heels sharp on the tile, face stiff with fury and fear. They didn't apologize. People like that rarely do until it benefits them. The criminal case took longer. It always does. Paperwork, scheduling, more logs, more interviews. But it moved. Brightbid terminated their admin access and sent a fraud report. The Westbridge cooperated fully once lawyers were involved. The nonprofit board replaced the committee structure and implemented proper controls: segregation of duties, dual authorization, escrow handling for cash, and an armored courier for deposits. My grandmother's scholarship survived because systems are stronger than families when families fail. Evan and Sienna eventually took a plea deal, not for being bad people, for specific acts: theft, tampering with charitable records, and filing a false report. They were ordered to pay restitution to the scholarship fund and complete community service. The judge also barred them from serving on any nonprofit board in the county for a set period. No jail, no spectacle, just consequence. Sienna's brand partnerships dried up quietly, not from public shaming, but from contracts that include morality clauses and background checks. Evan lost his job at a firm that didn't like employees who created legal risk. They moved out of their apartment when the lender tightened terms and their finances, already thin, collapsed under scrutiny. My mother tried to make it right in the only language she knew: gifts. She mailed me a check for $10,000 with a note that said, "For what we put you through." I didn't cash it. I mailed it back with a single line: "I'm not for sale." My father started therapy, quietly, without announcing it like an apology tour. Months later, he told me he'd realized he'd spent his life avoiding conflict by sacrificing the person who could take it. "I thought you were strong enough," he said. "I was," I replied, "but you don't get to use my strength as an excuse to hurt me." It took time, but the house changed. Not into something perfect, into something more honest. My mother learned slowly that tears don't erase damage, and me, I healed. My back improved, my sleep returned. I stopped flinching at unknown numbers. I changed my routines. I strengthened my boundaries like they were muscles. 6 months after the gala, the scholarship board offered me a formal role, not because I needed to prove anything, but because they wanted someone who respected controls. I accepted on one condition: full transparency and documented processes. No more family-only handling, no more trust us. They agreed, because trust is a feeling, controls are a system. 1 year later, I attended the next scholarship event at a different venue, smaller, calmer, and beautifully boring. No storms, no generator flickers, no drama hiding in candlelight. We used an escrow service for proceeds, dual control for access, and a third-party auditor who reviewed the accounts post-event. The total raised wasn't flashy, but it was clean. And when the first scholarship recipient stood up, an 18-year-old named Kiara who worked evenings at a grocery store and still made honor roll, I felt something in my chest loosen. My grandmother would have loved her. After the event, I walked outside into the crisp Chicago night, coat buttoned, shoulders relaxed. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "It's Sienna. I need to talk. I'm sorry. Evan left. I'm drowning." I stared at it for a moment, then did what I should have done years ago. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't try to rescue. I blocked the number. Then I put my phone face down, took a slow breath, and walked toward the train, feeling the city move around me like a life I'd finally earned. Because the lesson wasn't that evidence wins. It's that you don't have to be loud to be powerful. You don't have to be cruel to be free. And you don't have to pay for someone else's lie just because they expect you to. If you've ever been cast as the family scapegoat, if you've ever been told to fix it just to keep the peace, remember this: peace that costs your dignity is not peace, it's surrender. And the moment you stop surrendering, people either adjust or they reveal what they really wanted from you. So tell me, where are you watching from today? And have you ever had to prove your innocence to people who were supposed to love you? If you want the next story with even more twists, make sure you're subscribed because this kind of justice always has a sequel.